So this tutorial is on how to solve equations that have fractions in them. And the basic idea with equations with fractions is to basically get rid of the fractions so that they're no longer there, and then you can treat them like all of the other equations that you've already learned. The way that you get rid of the fraction is to look for the lowest common multiple or lowest common denominator of the fractions. So if we look at the first example, this one's a little bit easier because there is only one fraction. The bottom, the denominator is 4, so that will be the lowest common denominator. So the way that you get rid of 4 is your first step is to multiply both sides by 4. Or essentially you multiply every term by 4. So the left-hand side, I'm going to multiply by 4. And I'm going to multiply the right-hand side by 4. By doing that, I haven't changed the equation because I've multiplied both sides by the same thing. Now, what that enables me to do is it enables me to cancel out the 4's on the left-hand side, so that my next line will just be left with 3 times y plus 5 is equal to 28. Now this equation looks like all of the other ones that you've already learned, and you would just go ahead and you'd solve it in that way. So 3 times y is 3y, 3 times 5 is 15. That will be equal to 28. Your letters stay on the left, your numbers will move to the right, and you'll be left with 3y is equal to 13. And in this case, your answer will just be 13 over 3. Sometimes your answer will be a fraction, sometimes your answer will be a whole number. So let's move on to the other examples. So the one on the left, when you look at both sides of the equation, you have a fraction on the left-hand side with a denominator of 3, and a fraction on the right-hand side with a denominator of 5. So you have to first find the lowest common denominator, and that would be 15. So your first step is going to be to multiply both sides by 15. So nothing's going to change. All you're going to do is multiply both sides by the lowest common denominator of 15. So now that we've multiplied both sides by 15, again, we haven't changed anything, now we can cancel out the fractions. So 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 15 5 times. 5 goes into 5 once, 5 goes into 15 3 times. And now what I'm left with is I'm left with 5 times k plus 2 on the left, and I'm equal to 3 times k minus 4 on the right. It is extremely important that you keep the brackets. And now I would just go ahead and solve this one. So 5 times k is 5k, 5 times 2 is 10, 3 times k is 3k, 3 times negative 4 is minus 12, and I bring my letters to the left and my numbers to the right. And I divide both sides by 2, and I'm left with k is equal to negative 11. So really the only thing that's different, or the only thing that's new, is essentially getting rid of the fractions by multiplying by the lowest common denominator. Now the second example looks a little bit different, but in fact is the same. You're going to look again at the lowest common denominator of 3 and 4, and that will be 12. So you're going to multiply both sides by 12. So I'm going to multiply the left-hand side by 12 and the right-hand side by 12. When you do that, again, we can cancel out. 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 12 4 times. 4 goes into 4 once, 4 goes into 12 3 times. Now this one's a little bit different because there is a numerator. So now we need to take care of that. So 4 times 1 is 4. So this becomes 4 times 2x minus 5. And on the right-hand side, 3 times 3 is 9. So that will become 9 times x minus 2. Again, we must keep the brackets. But just watch out for that. If there is a numerator, you need to multiply the numerator by whatever was the result when you canceled out. And now again, we just go ahead and we solve this. So 4 times 2x is 8x minus 20, 9x minus 18, letters to the left, numbers to the right, and solve. Now we're actually going to look at another one. And this one is going to have a combination of variables and constants on both sides of the equation. So again, your first step is the same. You're going to look at your denominators. In this case, you have 3 and you have 5, and you're going to multiply by the lowest common denominator, which will be 15. The trick with this one, though, is that you actually have 4 separate terms. N minus 3 is a term, 2 is a term, n divided by 3 is a term, 2 is a term, n divided by 5 is a term, and 4 is a term. So you actually have 4 terms. When you multiply by 15, in order to not change the equation, you have to multiply every single term by 15. So it's going to end up being 15 times n divided by 3 plus 15 times 2 is equal to 15 times n divided by 5 plus 15 times 4. So in order to not change the equation, every single term had to be multiplied by 15. Now you can simplify, and by doing that we're going to cancel out. So 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 15 5 times, and 5 goes into 5 once, 5 goes into 15 3 times. And now we can simplify. 5 times n we write as 5n. 15 times 2 is 30. 3 times n is 3n. And 15 times 4 is 60. Now again, we do the same thing, letters on the left, numbers on the right, and solve. Now, by the way, with fraction equations, you can do a formal check in the same way that you would with all other equations. Just make sure when you do your formal check that you always write your left side and your right side from the original question. So in this case, if I were doing a formal check, my left side would be n divided by 3 plus 2. So I would say 15 divided by 3 is 5, 5 plus 2 is 7. That would be the left side. My right-hand side would be n divided by 5 plus 4. Then I would substitute 15 divided by 5 is 3. 3 plus 4 is 7. And then I would say left side equals right side. Therefore, n equals 15.